The control stick, gripped by a leather-clad hand, tightened as Major Donald Blakeslee, flying 20,000 feet above the French coast near Dieppe, spotted a distinct shape emerging from the cloud cover below. The massive American fighters, which British airmen had once derisively called 7-ton milk bottles, were poised to demonstrate their true capabilities. Blakeslee, through his gun sight, locked onto a Focke-Wulf 190 of JG-26 Schlager, utterly unaware he was about to make history. At a mere 300 yards, he pressed the firing button, unleashing a torrent of destruction. 8 Browning and /M 2.50 caliber machine guns erupted simultaneously, each spitting 800 rounds per minute. The combined firepower, a blistering 6,000 rounds per minute, far exceeding the theoretical 1,400 rounds per minute of traditional fighters, sent a concentrated stream of armor-piercing incendiary ammunition directly into the German aircraft. The Focke-Wulf, a proud symbol of the Luftwaffe, armed with its 20mm MG-150-120th cannons and two 7.92mm MG-17 machine guns, disintegrated in mere seconds. This marked the P-47's inaugural aerial triumph, signifying a profound shift in the very doctrine of air combat, a transformation that would be explained in full later in this story. The Americans hadn't merely crafted a new fighter, they had engineered an airborne weapons platform, poised to redefine the concept of aerial dominance through the sheer force of industrial output. This momentous victory was the culmination of months of development and operational hurdles. The P-47's first operational flight had taken place on March 10, 1943, when the 4th Fighter Group conducted a fighter sweep over France. This initial sortie was plagued by radio malfunctions, necessitating a return to base for the installation of British radio equipment. Throughout early 1943, the 4th Fighter Group, born from the RAF's storied Eagle squadrons, grappled with the significant transition from the agile Spitfires to the formidable P-47s. The Thunderbolt, weighing 12,731 pounds empty and reaching 17,500 pounds fully loaded, was more than twice the weight of a Messerschmitt Bf 109G. Republic Aviation's factory in Farmingdale, New York, was churning out these aerial behemoths at an unprecedented pace. By April 1943, Republic was completing one P-47 every 4 hours, with production rates steadily climbing each month. Alexander Kartveli, the Georgian-born chief designer, had approached fighter design with a philosophy that seemed utterly outlandish to European engineers: maximum firepower achieved through maximum production. Where German designers meticulously agonized over weight savings measured in mere grams, Kartveli unhesitatingly added guns, ammunition, and armor plating. Colonel Hubert Zemke, who commanded the 56th Fighter Group, instinctively grasped this distinct American approach. His unit had arrived in England in January 1943 and by April was already engaged in combat missions. The 56th would ultimately become the only 8th Air Force fighter group to fly P-47s exclusively throughout the entire war, eventually racking up an astonishing 674 aerial victories. The design principles behind the P-47's immense firepower were remarkably straightforward. Early P-47C and P-47D models carried 350 rounds per gun. The 8 guns, symmetrically arranged with 4 in each wing, created a convergence zone at 250 yards where all bullet streams intersected. Within this lethal zone, the concentration of firepower surpassed anything previously witnessed in single-engine fighter combat. A mere 1-second burst unleashed 107 half-inch projectiles, each hurtling through the air at 2,840 feet per second. Luftwaffe intelligence initially dismissed reports of the P-47's armament as technically impossible. 8 heavy machine guns on a single-engine fighter seemed beyond the realm of engineering. German fighter doctrine, in stark contrast, emphasized minimal armament necessary to destroy enemy aircraft, thereby conserving weight for enhanced performance. The Focke-Wulf 190A-5, the primary Luftwaffe fighter in Western Europe during the spring of 1943, carried two 7.92mm MG machine guns with 1,000 rounds each and two 20mm MG 150-120th cannons with 250 rounds each in the wing roots. While the 20mm explosive shells were individually more destructive than .50 caliber bullets, the limited ammunition supply of 500 cannon rounds demanded exceptionally precise marksmanship. German pilots had thus developed attack techniques predicated on ammunition conservation, employing short, accurate bursts at close range. This philosophy had proven highly effective against British Spitfires and Hurricanes, which typically carried 8.303 rifle-caliber machine guns or combinations of machine guns and cannons with similarly restricted ammunition counts. Following Blakeslee's historic first victory on April 15, encounters between P-47s and German fighters escalated rapidly. On April 17, P-47s of the 4th Fighter Group flew their first bomber escort mission, though early drop tank configurations limited their range and forced a premature return. The psychological impact on German pilots was immediate and profound. The visual effect of the P-47's 8 guns was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The P-47 standard ammunition loading sequence, one armor-piercing incendiary M8 followed by one tracer M10, meant that every fifth round glowed in flight, creating the illusion of a continuous beam of light rather than individual projectiles. By May 1943, the Luftwaffe's Recklen Test Center was meticulously examining captured P-47s. German engineers were astonished to discover that the Browning /M2 machine gun, despite being a 1933 design, had been refined through mass production to an unprecedented level of reliability. Parts were truly interchangeable, any component from any gun would fit perfectly into any other gun, a standard of industrial standardization that German industry simply could not achieve. The American ammunition feed system utilized disintegrating link belts that ejected cleanly from the aircraft. German fighters, in contrast, employed either drum magazines, limited to 60 to 200 rounds, or belt systems that retained links, adding weight and complexity. The reliability of the American system meant pilots could, if necessary, expend their entire ammunition load in one continuous burst. The sheer scale of American ammunition production left German analysts utterly stunned. By mid-1943, the 8th Air Force was flying over 200 P-47 sorties daily. With each aircraft carrying 2,800 rounds and pilots typically expending 60% of their ammunition, this translated to approximately 336,000 rounds fired daily, a quantity greater than the entire German fighter force in France received weekly. The Lake City Army ammunition plant alone had reached a production capacity of 1.6 billion rounds annually by 1943. This single facility outproduced Germany's entire small arms ammunition industry. The plant operated continuously with 20,000 workers across multiple shifts, maintaining a rigorous quality control that rejected any round varying by more than 0.001 inches from specifications. Republic Aviation's production capabilities were equally staggering. The Farmingdale plant spanned 765,000 square feet, with additional production occurring at Evansville, Indiana. Combined output reached over 400 P-47s monthly by late 1943, while German fighter production of all types struggled to exceed 1,000 monthly. German fighter doctrine consistently emphasized lightweight, highly maneuverable aircraft. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 G6 weighed 6,940 pounds fully loaded, and the Focke-Wulf 190A-5 reached 9,040 pounds. The P-47C, by comparison, weighed 13,500 pounds loaded, with the P-47D reaching 14,500 pounds, impossibly heavy by German standards. Yet, the P-47's Pratt & Whitney R-2800 double wasp engine, producing 2,000 horsepower initially and 2,300 in later models, provided competitive power-to-weight ratios. This seemingly excessive weight conferred remarkable stability as a gun platform and an unparalleled ability to absorb tremendous battle damage. The General Electric turbo-supercharger system alone weighed 845 pounds, nearly the entire armament weight allowance on German fighters, but it maintained full power at 30,000 feet, altitudes where the BMW 801 radial engine in the FW-190 lost significant power above 20,000 feet. The sheer shock of encountering P-47 firepower forced immediate and drastic Luftwaffe tactical changes. Traditional attack methods became suicidal whenever P-47s were present. American fighters did not require an optimal firing position, their sheer volume of fire created inescapable kill zones that German fighters simply could not survive crossing. Luftwaffe units rapidly developed new tactics emphasizing the FW-190's superior roll rate and turning ability at low altitude. However, reaching low altitude invariably required diving through the P-47's deadly fire envelope. American pilots quickly learned to exploit altitude and overwhelming firepower to force German fighters into disadvantageous positions. The contrast in ammunition philosophy was stark. German pilots entered combat with a mere 60 to 90 seconds of total firing time, while P-47 pilots commanded 30 to 35 seconds of continuous fire. This profound disparity created fundamental tactical differences. Germans conserved ammunition, while Americans fired liberally. August 17, 1943, the first Schweinfurt-Regensburg mission, vividly demonstrated both the P-47's capabilities and its limitations. Within escort range, P-47s utterly devastated German interceptors. The 56th Fighter Group alone claimed 17 victories without a single loss. However, the P-47's range, even with 75-gallon belly tanks, restricted escort coverage to roughly 375 miles from base. German tactics quickly evolved to exploit this critical limitation. Luftwaffe controllers would patiently wait until the P-47s departed before unleashing their attacks. The resulting bomber losses, a staggering 60% of B-17s, starkly highlighted the urgent need for extended range. Yet, within the P-47's protective envelope, bomber losses approached zero. The subsequent introduction of 108-gallon and later 150-gallon drop tanks progressively extended the P-47's operational range. By October 1943, P-47s could escort bombers up to 425 miles from base. Each extension meant German fighters had to wait longer and fly farther before engaging the bombers. This constant game of cat and mouse would eventually lead to a shift in German air defense strategy, a topic we will revisit later. The infrastructure supporting P-47 operations reached industrial scales that utterly defied German comprehension. Each P-47 squadron maintained reserves of 500,000 rounds. Forward airfields across England stockpiled millions of rounds, with supply ships continuously delivering ammunition from American factories. A typical P-47 group possessed enough ammunition for 30 days of maximum intensity operations without resupply. German fighter units, in stark contrast, typically operated on 3-day reserves, often less. American pilots fired liberally, while German pilots meticulously counted every round. Maintenance supplies revealed a similar disparity. American depots maintained complete replacement engines, gun sets, and major components. Damaged P-47s could be rebuilt from spare parts in days. German units, however, were forced to cannibalize damaged aircraft for parts, a practice that steadily reduced their operational strength, even when airframes could theoretically be repaired. October 14, 1943, known as Black Thursday, the Second Schweinfurt raid, marked a significant turning point. While P-47s flew escort to their maximum range, claiming 21 German fighters, the bombers faced devastating attacks after their escorts departed. German pilot reports revealed a growing and profound concern about engaging P-47s. The mathematics were irrefutable. A German fighter squadron, or Staffel, of 12 aircraft might possess a total of 7,000 rounds of mixed calibers. A single American P-47 squadron of 16 aircraft carried 44,800 rounds of heavy machine gun ammunition, with millions more in reserve. This firepower advantage was amplified by critical differences in training. American P-47 pilots arrived in combat with over 400 flight hours, including more than 100 hours of dedicated gunnery training. They had fired thousands of practice rounds at targets. German pilot training by late 1943, however, averaged only 110 flight hours before combat, with perhaps 20 hours of gunnery training. Fuel shortages meant many German pilots entered combat having fired their guns only a few times. They faced American pilots who had expended more ammunition in training than German pilots would fire in their entire combat careers. Colonel Francis Gabreski, who would become the leading P-47 ace in Europe with 28 victories, succinctly described the tactical reality: we didn't need to be better shots. We needed to put our sight on them and hold the trigger down. The .50s did the rest. By November 1943, P-47 groups began to emphasize ground attack missions after completing their escort duties. The 8.50 caliber guns proved devastatingly effective against locomotives, vehicles, and parked aircraft. Armor-piercing incendiary ammunition could easily penetrate locomotive boilers and vehicle armor. A single P-47 could destroy an entire train in one pass. The standard attack profile involved a 30-degree dive, opening fire at 1,350 yards, walking the rudder pedals to spray bullets across the target, and pulling out at 200 feet. In just 10 seconds, a P-47 could deliver 800 to 1,000 rounds into a target area 100 yards long. German transportation networks faced systematic destruction. P-47s destroyed locomotives faster than German industry could replace them. By December 1943, German units largely avoided rail movement during daylight hours due to the pervasive threat of P-47 interdiction. The P-47's role in the strategic bombing campaign proved absolutely crucial. While the P-51 Mustang would eventually assume the long-range escort role, P-47s provided the initial shield that allowed the bomber offensive to continue despite heavy losses. By early 1944, improved P-47D variants carried 425 rounds per gun, for a total of 3,400 rounds. The P-47D-25 introduced a bubble canopy, a paddle blade propeller, and provisions for rockets in addition to its guns. These continuous improvements ensured the P-47's combat effectiveness, even as German fighters also saw upgrades. D-Day, June 6, 1944, provided the ultimate demonstration of American air power. P-47s flew an astounding 2,398 sorties, claiming 84 German aircraft destroyed in the air and 89 on the ground. More significantly, they utterly paralyzed German ground movement through interdiction. The Luftwaffe managed only 319 sorties over Normandy on D-Day. Americans flew over 13,000. German fighters over Normandy possessed perhaps 200,000 rounds total. American fighters carried millions of rounds with virtually unlimited resupply. P-47s created free-fire zones where anything moving was relentlessly destroyed. Vehicle columns were reduced to burning wreckage in single passes. The distinctive whistling sound of diving P-47s, created by air flowing through gun ports and cooling ducts, became a terrifying weapon. By late 1944, German fighter production paradoxically peaked at 25,000 annually. But fuel shortages, catastrophic pilot losses, and overwhelming Allied numerical superiority meant most of these aircraft never flew operationally. Those that did faced odds exceeding 10 to 1. The Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighter offered a significant speed advantage but lacked firepower superiority. Its 430 million Malawian Kwacha's 108 cannons carried only 80 to 100 rounds per gun, for a total of 360 rounds. While devastating against bombers, their limited ammunition and low muzzle velocity made them less effective against agile fighters. The P-47N, introduced for Pacific operations, carried 550 gallons of internal fuel. This single-seat fighter carried more fuel than German medium bombers, powerfully demonstrating American industrial capability to build aircraft that defied conventional limitations. Final production numbers paint a vivid picture. Total P-47 production reached 15,683 aircraft, with peak monthly production exceeding 400 aircraft from combined plants. Total FW-190 production, all variants from 1941 to 1945, was approximately 20,000, with fighter variants accounting for roughly 13,000. Crucially, each P-47 was fully equipped with 8 guns and ample ammunition. German fighters, however, increasingly flew with reduced armament due to persistent shortages. By 1945, some FW-190s operated with only 2 cannons instead of 4 to conserve ammunition. Republic Aviation's facilities covered over 1 million square feet of production space. German fighter production, in contrast, operated from frequently bombed facilities with dispersed production lines, severely reducing efficiency. The Lake City ammunition plant alone produced 1.6 billion rounds annually. Combined with other facilities like the Frankfurt Arsenal, Des Moines Ordnance Plant, and Twin Cities Ordnance Plant, American production exceeded 10 billion rounds of .50 caliber ammunition during the war. German ammunition production for all aircraft weapons totaled approximately 4 billion rounds, including all calibers combined. Americans produced more rounds of their single heavy machine gun caliber than Germany produced of all aircraft ammunition types together. Quality control also differed dramatically. American ammunition underwent multiple inspections with a 2 to 3% rejection rate. German production, increasingly relying on slave labor and substitute materials, suffered from higher malfunction rates that significantly reduced effective firepower. The U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey documented the P-47's astonishing achievements in Europe: 3,916 enemy aircraft destroyed in aerial combat, 3,202 enemy aircraft destroyed on the ground, 9,000 locomotives destroyed, 86,000 railway cars destroyed, 68,000 motor vehicles destroyed, and 6,000 armored fighting vehicles destroyed. These statistics represent a strategic impact far beyond mere tactical success. The destruction of transportation infrastructure by P-47s dramatically reduced Wehrmacht mobility and logistics. The Luftwaffe's inability to counter P-47 ground attacks meant American air power operated with near impunity. American pilots who completed 25 mission tours, later extended to 35, then 50, rotated home to train new pilots. German pilots, however, flew until killed, captured, or incapacitated. By 1944, most Luftwaffe pilots were novices facing American veterans. The experience gap widened continuously. American training programs incorporated combat lessons immediately. German training, disrupted by fuel shortages and abbreviated by necessity, produced pilots with varying skill levels who then faced standardized American tactics. Beyond raw firepower, P-47s incorporated technologies that greatly enhanced their effectiveness. The turbo supercharger allowed for full power at extreme altitudes. The R-2800's legendary reliability meant consistent performance, with 400-hour intervals between overhauls. The K-14 gunsight, introduced in late 1944, automatically computed deflection using gyroscopic principles. Pilots simply framed targets and fired. German fighters, meanwhile, used reflector sights that required manual deflection estimates. Gun heating systems prevented freezing at altitude, ensuring P-47 guns functioned reliably at 40,000 feet in -60 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. German fighters frequently experienced gun freezing above 25,000 feet, particularly with wing-mounted weapons. American abundance extended to maintenance. P-47 groups maintained extensive spare parts, complete engines, gun sets, and propellers. Ground crews could completely re-engine an aircraft overnight. Battle damage that would require weeks of German repairs was fixed in days. German maintenance became increasingly problematic. Spare parts shortages meant relentless cannibalization. By late 1944, Luftwaffe serviceability rates dropped below 50%. American P-47 groups routinely maintained 85% serviceability rates. American crew chiefs were highly trained specialists with extensive technical education. German ground crews, depleted by conscription, increasingly consisted of foreign workers and Hitler Youth with minimal training. P-47s burned 100/130 grade aviation fuel, allowing higher manifold pressures and increased power. German synthetic fuel from coal provided inconsistent octane ratings, reducing performance and reliability. By late 1944, German fighters received only 30 to 50 gallons per sortie when available. P-47s routinely carried 370 gallons internally plus external tanks. American pilots flew multiple daily missions while Germans were grounded by fuel shortages. German pilots knew aggressive maneuvering consumed precious fuel needed for return. American pilots flew without fuel anxiety, enabling aggressive tactics Germans simply couldn't match. The P-47 perfectly embodied American industrial philosophy, overwhelming quantity of sufficient quality. Where Germans pursued technical perfection in limited quantities, Americans pursued adequate performance in unlimited quantities. Kartveli's design prioritized producibility over optimization. The P-47 was easier to manufacture than German fighters despite its greater complexity. Standardization and mass production meant faster production at lower cost. This philosophy extended throughout the supply chain. The same .50 caliber rounds fired by P-47s were used by bombers, ground forces, vehicles, and naval vessels. This simplified logistics while achieving economies of scale impossible with diverse calibers. German attempts to match American firepower proved futile. The FW-190A-8, introduced in February 1944, could carry additional cannons in underwing pods, but the added weight and drag severely degraded performance. The Sturmbach variant, optimized for bomber destruction with heavy armor and 30mm cannons, was helpless against escort fighters. The fundamental problem was industrial capacity. Germany could not simultaneously fight a multi-front war and match American production. Attempting to do so only accelerated resource exhaustion. Beyond physical destruction, P-47s achieved a profound psychological victory. The distinctive whistle of diving P-47s became a terror weapon. German soldiers developed persistent anxiety about P-47 attacks, diving for cover at any aircraft sound. American pilots understood their psychological advantage. They flew with confidence born from unlimited resources. German pilots flew with desperation born from scarcity. This mental state affected tactical decisions, with Germans increasingly avoiding combat unless absolutely necessary. The P-47 achieved a 4.6 to 1 kill ratio over 146,000 sorties. While 3,499 P-47s were lost to all causes, this represented a less than 0.5% loss rate per sortie. German fighter units suffered 50% monthly casualties by late 1944. The 56th Fighter Group, flying only P-47s throughout the war, became the top-scoring American fighter group in Europe, with 674 aerial victories. This demonstrated that supposed P-47 limitations were overcome by firepower, durability, and pilot skill. The P-47's 8.50 caliber guns represented more than just firepower, they embodied American industrial philosophy triumphant. Each gun required precision manufacturing and complex supply chains. That America could mount 8 per fighter with ammunition to sustain them demonstrated industrial supremacy that transcended mere military calculations. Military historians recognize P-47 firepower as decisive in achieving air superiority over Europe. The ability to deliver overwhelming firepower at extended ranges broke the Luftwaffe's defensive capability. Once air superiority was achieved, Allied victory became inevitable. The P-47's influence extended beyond World War II. It established principles dominating modern air combat: firepower superiority through volume of fire, standardization enabling mass production, and industrial capacity determining military capability. Modern fighters carrying rotary cannons firing 6,000 rounds per minute are direct descendants of the P-47's philosophy. Precision-guided munitions represent an evolution, not a rejection, of the firepower principle, another form of overwhelming force through industrial superiority. When West Germany rebuilt its air force in the 1950s, it adopted American equipment, tactics, and doctrine. German pilots trained on American aircraft, fired American ammunition, and absorbed American philosophy, the student learning from the master. While statistics tell the strategic story, individual accounts reveal the human dimension. Colonel Robert S. Johnson of the 56th Fighter Group survived an attack on June 26, 1943, that left over 200 bullet holes in his P-47. The aircraft absorbed damage that would have destroyed any German fighter, flying home with controls damaged and the canopy shattered. Colonel Hubert Zemke, commanding the 56th Fighter Group, developed tactics maximizing P-47 advantages. His Zemke fans spread squadrons wide, creating overlapping fields of fire that German fighters couldn't penetrate. Under his leadership, the 56th achieved remarkable success exclusively with P-47s. German pilot Heinz Nock, author of I Flew for the Führer, described facing P-47s as confronting streams of tracers that seemed solid, making bomber approaches through escort screens impossible. His memoir provides a valuable German perspective on American firepower superiority. Behind the statistics were millions of American workers producing the arsenal of democracy. At Republic Aviation's Farmingdale plant, women comprised 40% of the workforce by 1943. These workers built P-47s with precision exceeding peacetime standards while maintaining unprecedented production rates. The Lake City ammunition plant operated continuously, workers producing billions of rounds in climate-controlled facilities. Quality control inspectors, mostly women, rigorously rejected rounds varying slightly from specifications. Their dedication ensured American pilots never experienced the ammunition failures that plagued German fighters. American workers earned good wages, lived comfortably, and took pride in their contribution. German production, in contrast, increasingly depended on forced labor in deteriorating conditions, often resulting in sabotage and declining quality. The P-47 program cost approximately $1.3 billion in 1940s dollars. This represented a massive investment in a single weapon system. Yet American industrial capacity made this affordable while simultaneously producing thousands of other aircraft, tanks, and ships. American mass production continuously reduced unit costs. Early P-47s cost over $100,000 each. By 1945, the unit cost dropped to $83,000, despite increased capability. German fighter costs, conversely, increased throughout the war as production dispersal and material shortages reduced efficiency. Post-war analysis revealed the profound gulf between American and German production methods. American factories utilized specialized machine tools, assembly line production, and statistical quality control. German production retained craft methods unsuitable for mass production. The Browning M2's design facilitated mass production, with simple, robust components manufactured by semi-skilled workers using automated machinery. German weapons required skilled craftsmen using traditional methods. This fundamental difference meant America could expand production exponentially while Germany could not. The P-47's 8 guns represented a synthesis of American advantages, industrial capacity, technological innovation, logistical excellence, and training superiority. No single element was decisive, their combination proved utterly overwhelming. Capacity provided the foundation, the ability to produce fighters, guns, and ammunition in vast quantities. Technology enabled effectiveness, with turbo-supercharging, reliable engines, and precision manufacturing. Logistics delivered materials where needed. Training ensured pilots could exploit these advantages. Germany possessed excellent pilots, innovative technology, and tactical sophistication. But without the industrial foundation to support them, these advantages proved insufficient. The Luftwaffe was defeated not by superior tactics, but by overwhelming material superiority, symbolized by 8 guns firing continuously. German pilots facing P-47 Thunderbolts learned harsh lessons about modern warfare. Their Focke-Wulf 190s, excellent fighters by traditional standards, were overwhelmed by American firepower delivered through industrial production. 8.50 caliber machine guns supplied with unlimited ammunition represented a new paradigm of warfare. The transformation from initial confidence, through shock, to eventual acceptance mirrors Germany's larger World War II experience. Initial tactical superiority based on innovation and skill crumbled against American mass production and material abundance. The P-47, initially dismissed as too heavy, proved that industrial might could overcome tactical disadvantages. German pilots were stunned not just by 8 guns firing in unison, but by what those guns represented: a nation capable of producing unlimited weapons, ammunition, and aircraft. The FW-190 might have been better in traditional terms, but traditional terms had become obsolete. The P-47's .50s rewrote air combat rules through industrial power. The legacy endures in every modern fighter, emphasizing firepower over finesse, every massive munitions expenditure, every industrial approach to military challenges. All trace their lineage to the moment German pilots first encountered 8 synchronized Browning machine guns and realized their entire understanding of air combat was obsolete. The P-47 Thunderbolt didn't just outgun the Focke-Wulf 190, it outproduced, outsupplied, and ultimately outthought German aviation philosophy through overwhelming firepower delivered by industrial democracy. The 8 guns weren't merely weapons, they were messengers of American industrial might. Every bullet demonstrated production capabilities Nazi Germany could never match. The thunderous roar of 8 synchronized Brownings became the sound of inevitable Allied victory. A sound that echoed from the factories of America to the skies over Europe, forever changing the nature of aerial warfare. The men who fought against America left the most honest record of its power. Battlescars brings you one of those stories every single day. If this one held you to the end, subscribe, tomorrow's story is already waiting. And your next one is right here.